Hi there everybody, my name is Ben Stapley and my desire is to help you capture and create moving and memorable moments. Today I wanted to talk to you about avoiding predictable services. You might not work in the church or nonprofit world, but don't worry, if you oversee any type of regular event like a conference, staff meeting, or even a birthday party, then these principles will apply to you. It can be easy for your church service or your event to get into a rut, especially if it happens every month or weekly like a Sunday service. Over 52 weeks a year, your creative teams can start to tank out. When this happens, they start to rely on past successes instead of crafting dynamic new ones. When you get to this point, your services have become predictable and you're in a rut. Regardless of how you structure your services, if they're timed out to the minute or if they're open-ended, below are a number of steps to help develop dynamic services. Hopefully these will get you in a fresh perspective and help you put your best creative foot forward. Step 1. Identify your liturgy and diverge from it. But you might be saying, my church doesn't have a liturgy, it doesn't have a structure, we don't even have an order of service. Well, if you're saying that, then you're lying. Every church has a liturgy. Regardless if your church is high or low, rural or urban, young or old, you have a liturgy or service structure. After you've acknowledged you have a liturgy, you need to write it out. And that is because you can only start to break the rules after you know what they are. In the end, acknowledging your liturgy allows you to adapt the service structure so that it does not become stale. Start with a bang. Step 2, start with a bang. You need to start this way because all of our cultural events have a built-in delay. Previews play before the movie starts, and the game doesn't begin until you sing the national anthem. So when people come to your event, your church service, they come expecting a delay. You can combat this expectation by starting with a bang. Start with something people don't want to miss. Now, disclaimer, this is difficult because we want everyone to experience our best content, which is natural. But you need to work against it. Because if you do, and you put this principle into practice once a month, you'll start to change the culture and build an expectation for the start of your service or event. An easy and cheap way to do this is to start with an awesome purchased video. We once did this at our church by handing out 2 premium chocolate bars to everybody in the seats. We told them to A, enjoy the one, and then B, hand out the other one to a friend and then invite them to join you for a service. It was incredible to watch everyone in the foyer scramble into the service once they heard what was going on. Whatever bang you start with, make sure to reference it later in the service. Referencing this lets latecomers know what they missed out on and in turn will help them show up earlier the following week. You want to leverage FOMO, fear of missing out, as much as you can by starting with a bang. Step 3, throw a curveball. It's natural to build a service to a climactic conclusion. You start up slow and steady and build the energy and intensity or pace as you move along, and then to peak and then dismiss. Most of us naturally do it because it works. We do it because it is a structure that people expect. The problem that most of us who structure services or events is we do it all the time. When we keep the structure the same, slow build to a peaking finish, it becomes formulaic. And if it's formulaic, then your guests know what's coming. And if that's your case, then you need to throw them a curveball. Do this by placing an element that usually lands at the end, like communion, near the beginning. Your countdown hits 0, and instead of your worship leader starting into a peppy and upbeat song, the lights dim, your lead pastor walks onto stage, and they say, you're once far from God, but you've been brought close because of the death and resurrection of Christ. And that is something we need to remember, something we need to thank God for right now. That is throwing a curveball. That is avoiding predictable services. I was once in a church that asked everybody, instead of standing up and greeting their neighbor for 30 seconds, they asked everybody to stand up while the ushers handed out milk and cookies to everybody for a number of minutes while we mingled and felt like kids again. It really doesn't matter what you do, just do something to break up the potential monotony of your service structure. I would be so bold to say this, a mediocre curveball is just as good as an incredible fastball. A service element that is adequate and fresh is just as engaging as an element that is incredible and regular. And that's because the freshness will supersede the mediocrity. Now the trick is to do something fresh and incredible. Step 4, all killer, no filler. This step is more of a mindset that you need to adopt than an element or technique. But the mindset will influence and motivate all the elements and techniques that you implement. This all-killer, no-filler mindset addresses the fact that you have a limited time in a service, so you need to make every minute count. Sometimes I would write this mantra in big letters on a dry erase board before we plan a particular service or message series. It helps remind us to generate awesome content instead of phoning it in. After planning your service, look over the run sheet and ask yourself, is there anything, any moment, any minute that doesn't serve the vision for the morning? Ask yourself if there's any content that is filler. If there is, then cut it out or replace it. It would be better to end up with a couple of minutes early than to pad time with boring content with filler. And this filler isn't just the elements in your service, it's also the time between elements. Nothing grounds the momentum of your service to a halt as often as dead air time. If your church struggles with needlessly long pauses between elements, and a lot of churches do, then consider recruiting and releasing a volunteer to produce the service. If that is too much to bite off, then at least practice the transitions between elements before your services. This would drastically cut down on the long pauses. Your services are the first impression for many people checking out the church and God, so make them count by making every minute and moment count. Step 5. Address a cultural crisis. Whenever a national or global crisis happens during the week, people on Sunday anticipate a response. They want to know that their church and their God is involved and concerned with what's happening in the world. So capitalize on these moments. You may be tempted to let this opportunity slip on by because you don't know exactly what to say or to do, and that's completely understandable. But addressing the issue in some manner is better than not addressing it at all. Not only respond to a crisis, but create a plan before the crisis. What do you want to do during the next natural disaster or fatal shooting? You need to develop a service response throughout the week. This response could be a thoughtful prayer, an opportunity for volunteers to serve, or suggested ways to give. In the end, when there's a cultural crisis, your community wants to see you model Romans 12:15. They want to see you demonstrate a posture and a heart attitude that weeps with those who weep. Step 6. Be Spirit-led through the process. The best way to avoid stagnant services is to be Spirit-led. I say throughout the whole process because it can be easy to wait until Sunday morning to invite the Spirit into the process. But the Spirit desires to be involved from the start to the finish. So I would encourage you to invite the Holy Spirit into your planning, practice, and performance. Into your 3 Ps, planning, practice, and your performance. This inviting highlights our reliance on God, our Creator, for our most creative ideas. When you exhibit this reliance, God demonstrates Himself to be faithful, and you see His involvement throughout the whole process from start to finish. You start to see innovative ideas pop up. You start to move away from predictable services. So these are my 6 steps for avoiding predictable services within a church or event setting. Email me at benstapley@gmail.com and let me know which ones I missed. I would love to hear from you and learn from you. I'd also love to connect with you on social media, so look me up. I enjoyed sharing with you today. I hope you enjoyed learning as well.